I think the term big pharma has almost become null and void, because moving forward, we cannot ignore the big tech companies, the big social companies that are out there, the big global players, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Apples, the Twitters that are out there, Microsoft, that are having an impact on the pharma world and healthcare provision. So you can see from Apple's introduction of Research Kit, Health Kit, Care Kit, that there's a real intention to make an impact in the healthcare provision and the pharmaceutical world.
But I guess that comes from the fact that those guys have been at the forefront in pushing the consumer. And as they've got closer and closer to understanding, and let's face it, the mobile phone has done a lot to facilitate a lot of this. As they've become closer to people again, with their tech, it makes perfect sense for them to do that. And, it's a shame that in some instances, farmers kind of miss the boat a little bit with some of that stuff. They've always been trying to get the connections to the patients, to the HCPs and all of that kind of thing. But it's consumer brands that have just done it as part of the course. And now we have to try and find some way of connecting those two guys together in a little bit. There's obviously, pharma does what pharma does. There was always going to be the need for the pills, for the treatments, for the therapy area solutions. That's the expertise that we need to leverage with the stuff that the guys that the Googles and everyone and Apple are doing, in a way that's beneficial for all parties, not just the patients. It's beneficial for from a commercial sense as well. And I think that's probably the thing that we'll be pushing forward with up till maybe 2020, is all having that same language across all of these devices and all of this tech and all of this healthcare. And that's certainly one of the challenges I see when I do workshops and things, is how do we connect to those patients to make a meaningful conversation, a story that links back to our brand. We have a brand out there, we have a treatment that absolutely solves what you need it to solve, because we've followed your numbers, we followed the data that you've been providing, or you've been giving us the information that we need on blogs or on social or anything like that, and we inputted that back into what we're trying to give you to help as well.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult hurdle, I think, that we've got to overcome because of regulatory. I think regulatory has to sort of think a little bit differently. Digital is still seen as a bit of a grey area, and that's really, really got to improve.
It doesn't make me worry for Big Pharma, because you're absolutely right. Where they've, I think, struggled to form those networks, think about social platforms, think about how they can build and establish a relationship with customers and patients. It's already there in place for these big tech and social companies. They're there, they've already got the foundations in place. And so it's not a huge leap to think about how they can start to tiptoe into the healthcare provision space and leave the big pharma companies behind. I think the solution might come from big pharma engaging more with those companies, but then you've got to think about what the value exchange is. What's in it for the big tech and social providers out there? What can pharma bring to the party? The other way I think they can address it, and we start to see a little bit of this more now, is investing in those startups, investing in those smaller companies, venture capitalists, funding, that type of thing, that helps to get some of those platforms up and running, which they can then take more ownership and drive more as a pharma company. In 10 years' time, there's going to be a new social network or a new platform that enables you to do something different, that allows those conversations to happen with those patients on their terms. I think about Snapchat and the way that that's going through the roof right now, but you could easily see how you can start to apply that to the healthcare environment. Who's to say that rather than having a block booking of 8 patients to see in a morning consultation as a GP, that you can't see those 8 patients, or at least have a conversation with them through Snapchat. And okay, yes, 2 of those patients you might need to see face to face and progress the diagnosis more, but you can certainly have those interactions and those initial interactions with those patients through a platform like Snapchat. I think for an older generation, there's a skepticism, there's a reservation about giving that information out there and allowing people to access your social profiles and your social data and your personal data. The furore around electronic health records is a good example of that in the UK, at least. So, but I think that's changing, and I think there's a generational step whereby people are open to at that level of transparency where companies can have access to and interpret information about their lives.
Kevin Plank, the CEO of Under Armour, he came up with the quote, "Data is the new oil." He was pursuing this virulently with what he was trying to do with Under Armour. But I think one of the things that we've seen is partnerships in terms of the languages that technology speaks is one of the things that's starting to sort of level out again. This interoperability between devices has been a challenge with technology. Being able to connect X and Y together has always been one of the problems in making a world that we live in now. And the challenge that someone like Under Armour had is they had a device for monitoring your heart rate. They had, they were producing trainers with sensors in there as well. It was pulling all of those together to create a more holistic approach to your data and managing it in a way that was tangible for you as an athlete. They worked with HTC to produce the sensors and the apps that tie all of this together. And I think this is one of the things that comes out of having a world that is more open, that is more interconnected itself, because we see open source platforms start to emerge where the languages and the tech is more open and more approachable for someone who does have an idea, who does have that startup, who does have that piece of tech that they want to communicate with an app or with a system, with an operating system, for instance. And I think that is another thing that we're starting to see emerge with technology. Developers, it's becoming easier to develop for. And that's always got to be at the forefront of emerging tech and unifying technology with story, with what we want our brands to do, is making it easy to actually get those stories and those things communicating together.